Hi, and thanks for joining me. This is Gregory, and you're watching 1 in 20 D&D. I am going to do our latest recap from our VÄRLDEN Reach 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And there's quite a lot to cover in this episode recap, and this time it may be a little less linear and more stream of consciousness because there was some pretty big stuff that went down, so I kind of have to wrap my head around all of it. So just bear with me, and I'll do my best to make it at least somewhat coherent. So let's see. The first thing that I should say that's important is this was the continuation of our journey towards finding the bandits that were raiding and gone from just being regular bandits stealing goods and things from passing travelers to murdering, actually, let's say slaughtering the travelers and then taking their goods. So it became really violent, and the Vactera wanted us to investigate what happened and why this has been occurring. We last time met a ranger who introduced himself as Tarotar, and he was kind of guiding us after taking care of the raiding party that we had tracked. He was guiding us to his cave and then further on to the bandits' actual hideout. And when we started this adventure, it was kind of the morning after we were in his cave where he had been holed up for some time trying to pick off members of these bandits. And so some interesting things happened first thing in the morning. Marana and Alina had a small conversation where Alina approached Marana and kind of asked her about the journal that she had been carrying and mentioned that it had been she had gone, I guess, about 4 years prior in search of Marana. And when she went to them, we don't know who they are, but when she went to them, they simply said, no, we don't know where Marana is. Oh, and by the way, take this, and threw this journal at Alina and slammed the door, basically saying, we don't ever want to see either of you again. Now, that was the story Alina gave to Marana. The other characters have no idea about any of that. And basically, Alina was asking if Marana had ever seen that journal. Well, neither one of them can read Elvish, and this journal happens to be in Elvish. Similarly, the one that we had found last time that we didn't find, but we saw the ranger Tarotar writing in, and Lily had kind of taken it from him. And he also had written in Elvish, so that may be important later on. Then Titus was actually not drinking the night before, so he woke up and was relatively sober and was kind of like eager to get the day started. Jermaine had made bread again for everyone and was, waking up. He's still kind of thrilled about finding this magical mandolin, and so he was in a fantastic mood and very cheerful. And so Lily, some of the others grumbled as well, but Lily in particular was like, why are you so cheerful in the morning, and please stop, and or you need to work on that, to which Jermaine said, okay, I'll do my best to be more cheerful. And then at which point Alina came up, grabbed some bread, and shoved it in Jermaine's mouth to get him to shut up. So there was some fun silliness in the morning first thing. Well, we set out to find the bandits' camp, and on the way we were ambushed by some of the bandits. We had a fight with 4 archers, essentially, that were hiding up on these bluffs kind of on either side of the trail that we were traveling along. And it started out in a bit of a slow fight. Jermaine used one of his new abilities through the mandolin, was able to fly and kind of get up right next to one of the bandits. Marana was doing her best to kind of pick off an archer with her arrows, but kind of was missing and hitting and missing and not having real good luck. Alina tried to climb up the cliff face or the rock face to get to another one of the archers, and she kept slipping and falling. And we got to see some new tricks from her because she actually pulled out a short bow and started using her short bow in combat, which was new and interesting. One of the coolest things that happened in this fight was that Titus decided that since he's a melee fighter, he really couldn't get up to these archers, and didn't. He only had his spear, and he only had one spear. He didn't want to risk hurling his spear and then having no weapons. He decided he would just simply provide protection for Marana by, imposing himself in his shield to give her some form of cover, which I thought was super cool, especially seeing as how the group has been kind of sparring and training in the mornings. It's almost like now in the game itself, we're actually starting to see this cohesion between some of the characters, which is super cool. And I thought it was really well played on Charles's part. I thought that the fight went pretty smoothly, to be honest. It was a little tricky because we couldn't get a good shot at these guys, but we were still able to overcome them within a short while. Ku climbed up next to Jermaine, so Ku and Jermaine kind of overwhelmed the first one. They were meanwhile picking off little bits, picking away at the others with arrows. And Lily kind of she's really been developing in this fight and the next, where we actually confronted the leader of the bandits. She started to kind of become this like really incredibly effective support character. She's really falling into the support role, in my opinion, Gregory's opinion, really beautifully. Like her healing, she's using like mass healing word at just the right time to kind of give everybody that little boost. She's then using her like sacred flame or fireball or what have you to kind of do some critical damage at the right moments, and really is just like really being this perfect support role character beautifully. And on as far as the character is concerned, it's really fascinating because, at least from Jermaine's perspective, at first he was really seeing Titus and Alina kind of as the like surly members of the bunch, but Lily is also starting to show some of her true colors, and like she's a little, well, obviously hot-tempered and irritable, and so there's some depth showing from Lily's character as well, beautifully played by Tracy. And so everyone's kind of getting into their roles, quote unquote, the roles in the group, which is kind of neat. You had some, Perdita, of course, just did her thing with her sword, but she also has a bow that she uses fairly effectively as well, longbow. So we did pretty well. The ranger, that Turotar, he was holding his own and helped us out quite a bit. So one by one, we ended up taking out these archer ambushers. Titus, after we had taken out the first two, Titus kind of like charged up, realizing that, he could do more if he could get next to one of these guys, charged up the hill and just bull rushed one with his shield and bashed him off of the edge, and then proceeded to like jump down on top of him with his spear. And by the time Jermaine had gone to the second and then over to Titus to help on the third, Titus had effectively taken out the third assailant, and then we easily took down the fourth. So didn't really get much except a little bit of coin from them. They didn't have anything in the way of like items or whatnot, riches and such, and kind of handled that and then proceeded on. We did, I guess we did camp out before we made it to the actual bandit hideout, and nothing really happened there. It was a fairly quiet night. The only thing that's been interesting the whole time is that Lily has really been pressing Turotar and just like, I don't trust you, I don't trust you, I don't trust you. And just at every chance kind of harrowing him, which was interesting. Then we go and we like are trying to decide how we're going to get into this abandoned dwarven mine to find out, to overtake Mogan, the leader, this Goliath leader. So it's decided that we should do a little bit of reconnaissance. Now, Turotar gave us a kind of a sketch layout of what he remembers the mine to more or less be, and then we decided that Jermaine, Alina, Marana, and I guess Turotar, he would kind of lead us over there, and then we would do some scouting. Jermaine cast invisibility on himself and Marana to give them a little bit extra concealment, since Alina is incredibly stealthy all on her own. Then Marana also used her ranger ability, Pass Without a Trace, and so between that and the bonus from that and then the invisibility, we all were pretty sneaky and stealthy. So we got a view about 50 feet or so from the entrance and just kind of like hunkered down and watched for a while. We saw a guard come out, kind of like look left, look right, just kind of nonchalantly, not really serious or intently, but just maybe making moves or making a show of it, so to speak. Then he went back in, waited about 15 minutes, nothing happened. So Marana said, okay, give me a few minutes. Now, she's invisible, so we didn't really see what was happening. But as players, we know she used her trinket, which is a glass eye, and she used an ability to get like arcane sight, which allows her to send out like a little invisible eye, basically. So she used that. She basically meditated for like 10 minutes, had her eye go into this mine and look around and see what's going on. So after she spends the time doing that, she basically says, okay, I'm pretty sure we can handle this. Let's go back. So we're like, okay. So we head back to the other group, and Jermaine asks Alina and Marana on the way back, it's like, hey, maybe we should, since I'm invisible, maybe we should play a little prank on the others. Now, I'm gonna have to start. I think in the future I might start doing these recaps in Jermaine's voice, and at the very least, I'm gonna do some character background stuff, like introduce each of the characters and who's playing who and so forth. I'll do that in one of these videos coming up here real quick, so I can kind of get into character a little more, which is kind of fun since you might not be able to actually see the live play videos anymore. So that'll be in the future. Now, on the way back, Jermaine suggests this prank, so he goes and sneaks up, quite successfully actually, quite stealthy, gets right into the middle of the group. Lily was really the only one that was kind of paying any kind of attention, and she still didn't hear him approach, and Jermaine got right in the middle, drops the invisibility, and screams out, "Boo!" again, kind of like he did with the bandits from the raiding group the day prior or 2 days prior or whatever when they did that. So he scared the crap out of him, made everybody jump and starts laughing, and then Lily shoots him with the sacred flame, and which he still thought was pretty darn funny and kind of worth it. And if for no other reason than to kind of endear himself a little bit with Alina and Marana, because Marana and Alina basically both kind of like, he may not have heard them, but they basically said to each other like, well, I guess he does have his uses. And also, I sort of kind of got a little bit of approval from Marana, like that was pretty funny. And so he enjoyed that moment immensely. So we kind of discussed like, okay, I think we could just go through the front. Marana basically said, hey, there's only a few guards. I think if we sneak in there, we can take them out. Now, Jermaine is going to have a conversation with Marana at some point, because he's quite curious about how she got, what she was doing when she was meditating, because again, she was invisible. All he knows is she got quiet for 10 minutes and said, hey, give me a few minutes, and then she says, okay, let's go. And they're like, okay, what's that, some weird ranger ability or what? And he's quite curious about it, which she may or may not discuss. But he's also curious about, he got to see Perdita use an arrow that had some pretty arcane and interesting uses to it. When she shot this arrow, it split into 3 pieces and then struck its target, which was really fascinating to him. He's seen Titus on more than one occasion pull out this small multicolored cube, and clicking on it seems to have this magical effect on his attacks, where, for instance, if he clicks the red face, it seems that he starts to attack with fire, and if he clicks the blue one, he starts to attack with cold. So Jermaine is kind of fascinated by that. He's used his coin, where he flips his coin and it becomes it alters fate, so to speak, which out of game allows you, or above table, it allows someone, I can make someone re-roll. I can either do it for myself or make someone else. Kind of like luck. It's similar to luck, but it's more like a magical item use, though, rather than a feat, so to speak. So anyway, these are things that are rolling around in in Jermaine's head, like, how did she do it? Like, what did she do? How did she do that? Well, anyway, we know that we're going to go and assault these fools and not even try to go through the back door. So we go ahead and, again, as sneakily as we can, go into the main entrance. We see right away, or it was described to us by both Marana and Tarotar. So Marana kind of confirmed what Tarotar the Ranger had already told us. So what's really fascinating to Germaine is that here's this Ranger who has been, as far as Germaine is concerned, completely forthright from the beginning. Regardless of what he had done in the past, every inclination that Germaine has gotten is this guy is on the level. He's been honest with them. He's been withholding only personal information, nothing information about like what the situation they're dealing with involves. So as far as Germaine's concerned, this guy's on the level. Whereas Lily and some of the others are very, very skeptical and downright judgmental of this guy. Germaine is like, hey, everything he says keeps checking out. So as far as Germaine's concerned, this guy is on the level and he's okay with it. So Marana confirmed that the layout is exactly how he described it, and there's only a few guards. Let's go take them. So we sneak in. There was 2 sets of 3 guards. We go in and split kind of down these 2 side hallways, these little alcoves, essentially. Easily take out the 3 of them, and then go into the main room where Mogon is kind of waiting for us. Now, Germaine was still kind of stealthy and invisible, I think, or he made himself invisible again. He and Lily this time invisible. Or he and Perdita, I should say, rather. Then they sneak in and they see Mogon. He's got 2 wolves kind of at his side, and he's this big Goliath sitting on a little tiny dwarf throne, which was kind of this ridiculous, visual for the group. Germaine was actually the first one to see Mogon, and what he did is the first one to, I guess, confront Mogon. Germaine tried to cast Hold Person on Mogon, but Mogon resisted it, and then he said, okay, who are you? And Germaine's like, I'm not really anybody, but I'm not a dummy like you, and by the way, I've got some friends here, and we're here to handle you. It's on, or something. I'm totally paraphrasing, but that's essentially what happened. So we had this fight. It was an interesting fight again. There was a lot of missing, and like Titus, his first round of combat, he gets up in Mogon's face. He's just ready for this fight. 5 attacks, 5 misses. It was just awful to watch. Oh no, what happened? We were throwing some spells at him, attacking with swords and bows and the whole thing. He was a tough dude. Germaine was able to cast Shatter early on and actually took out the wolves pretty quickly, which apparently Ku was a little frustrated. The kitty didn't get to play with the doggies, and so that was kind of funny, little interplay during the combat. Marana and Tarotar stood off to the side and just kind of assailed him with arrows. Perdita, Titus, myself, Alina, we all got right in the fray with him, and at one point he actually took out Germaine. Germaine took a couple of big hits, one round after another, and Germaine was knocked unconscious. And which there was a really cool thing that happened at this point. Again, from Germaine's perspective, this was one of the high points of the combat. Marana had Ku kind of sneak around and pull Germaine out of melee, let's say, out of the reach of Mogon, so that he couldn't be, any further hurt or damaged. And that was, to Germaine, he wakes up and here's Ku again right by his side. So Germaine is having this really interesting, connection developing with Ku, where again in the ambush, he and Ku were kind of fighting, flanking the same archer. Here's Ku pulling him out of the fray. Germaine has once or twice, healed Ku in the middle of combat. So there's this really fascinating thing developing with Ku and Germaine, which is kind of an interesting inroad, I hope, to developing a deeper relationship with Marana, or a closer, let's say, relationship with Marana as well. So that's kind of fun to see happening. And then you have Lily again. Man, she just keeps popping these spells like right at the perfect moment. She had cast Mass Cure Wounds early on in the combat, which kind of boosted us up a little bit. Everybody was real low, or a few of us were real low, especially Jermaine. But Jermaine got hit again, and that was what took him unconscious. Then a few moments later, he's making his saving throws. He made one, I think, saving throw, and then Lily comes through again with another healing word to help and bring him back from the dead, so to speak. So he like kind of comes back to consciousness with Ku standing guard over him, which was really cool. Then gets to, Jermaine takes a potion, gets back in it. Perdita, she's doing her thing. Perdita and Titus have this real neat kind of synergy happening as well, where they both have the ability to kind of impose their shield and like give other people some extra protection, which is really cool. So we actually functionally have two full-on tanks and an off tank being Jermaine. Jermaine has got a decent armor class and a shield, so he'll get into the fight if he needs to, which he did in this one. And so we actually have this really cool dynamic where we've got a pretty solid front line, and because with Alina going in and doing crazy damage with her sneak attacks, and then Alina just like throwing all this support, as well as Marana with her bow and Ku. It's like there's this really awesome dynamic because you have Marana, Jermaine, and Lily, who can all give out a little bits of healing here and there, especially Lily. And then you have this heavy front line. So we really do have this amazingly elite team, and a really well formed elite team, which is exciting as a player. Like, it doesn't usually happen that way, where it's so beautifully balanced. So I'm really loving that. As a player, I'm really loving that. So we go through this combat, and it's intense. Lily gets the killing blow and is just like shocked, like, what? I actually hit something and it took him down, which was cool. She used her guiding bolt and basically like blast him through the eye or something with her guiding bolt to kind of end the fight. So that was really neat. Then we searched this compound, and there were a couple more guards, which we easily dispatched. We find the loot that Mogon had been amassing, which was mostly some coins. There was this really cool, like a fold-out mechanical bow that Perdita found, which in the loot pile, which was kind of cool. Some potions, scrolls, and that kind of thing. And then we also found... while we were going upstairs and starting to search around, Tarotar the Ranger decides he's going to sneak off. Or not sneak off. I'm sorry. He just walked off from the group kind of on his own. Well, Lily is like, oh, hell no, you're not leaving on your own. She follows him. Then Alina and Marana decide to follow them. And Jermaine kind of was also like, I better keep an eye on things. And so he kind of came up I don't want to say, a moment later, let's say, he came up after Lily had already started to kind of confront him. What happened is he went into what was his old room, apparently, and found a journal and pulled the journal, and it was his journal. Now Lily like snatched it from him, was like, what is this? You can't read it because it's in Elven again. This is the second Elven journal. They look similar. Alina's interested now. She pulls this journal and steps out of the room, and Lily's like, who are you? What's really going on? And all this stuff. Now, in the other room, Alina looks at this book, and Marana's right there by her side. They look at this, and all three journals are essentially a match. The handwriting is similar in all three journals, which is really freaking weird. Now, come to find out from basically talking with him, he basically spills the beans finally and says, okay, here's the deal. One of the things he pulled out of his chest was, because he had a key for this chest, and he's like, hey, this was my chest. They're like, what are you doing? Lily actually blasted him with Sacred Flame and said, what are you doing? And he's like, look, I'm just this is my stuff. I'm trying to get my stuff. Comes to find out, he pulls out a medallion, and it's a Vacter medallion. So he was a member of the Vacter. Long story short, he was in Handle, shirked his duties because he got involved with a woman. He felt like, his mission failed because of him, and now he's going to be in trouble with the Vactaire. So he essentially decided to walk away, became a bandit, started stealing essentially to try to survive. He didn't feel confident going back to the Wood Elves. He didn't feel confident going back to Vactaire. He just felt like, oh my God, I gotta hide, and ended up, one thing led to another. He became a bandit. Now, another thing he pulls out is this locket. Now, inside the locket, there's a picture of like this young girl, like 12-year-old girl or something like that. Okay, so again, I try to condense this as much as I can. So much happened in such a short time that I'm really still trying to wrap my head around it. It turns out his name, oh gosh, I hope I have his name written down right here, is Alduin Nightgaze. Okay, his name is Alduin Nightgaze. Now, Perdita supposedly knew he was in the mountains and should be looking for him. As soon as Lily finds out, Lily kind of yells out to Perdita like, "I knew it! It's Alduin! Hey, come on!" whatever. Gets her attention. He was lying. I knew it. To try to kind of like stick it in Perdita's face, like I knew he was being dishonest. And so Perdita comes in the room now. Meanwhile, Titus goes and finds a cot and like basically crashes out on the cot and proceeds to continue drinking. He had already started drinking the night before. Actually, I should mention that Alina tried to kind of confront him sort of about it and said like, "Hey, you were really good today. Thank you for protecting Marana. Do you really want to drink again?" She actually tried to pull the flask out of his hands, and Titus is really strong and Alina had no chance. So he started getting drunk the night before again. And the last thing Alina said before, I'm sorry, I'm rewinding a little bit, but this was really important and I kind of overlooked it. The last thing Alina said was, "Thank you for protecting my sister," which Titus is kind of like stops in his tracks. He was on his way back to the camp and he's like stops at that comment like, okay, I'm too old for this shit. And he like walks away to kind of like be on his own and just drink himself into a stupor again. So that was a bomb that was dropped. Now, of course, this is player knowledge. Jermaine has no idea about that. Only Titus at this point does. So back to the mine where we're searching and having this confrontation with Alduin. His name is not actually Tarotor. It's Alduin Nightgaze. Turns out Perdita sees this locket and she has this flashback to the vision she had when we first encountered the wrecked caravan. And what she remembered is the woman in that vision who was kind of like trying to console her and like, dear, was wearing this particular locket. Now she looks into the locket and there's a picture in it and she's just like slammed. She's like, "Wait a minute, who are you? What's going on?" Alduin says he found this locket. He has no idea who it is. It's not, it has nothing. He just kept it as a reminder of the terrible things that he had to do and the terrible things he saw and what he doesn't want to do again. And Lily is like, "Yeah, whatever. I don't believe that at all." And just basically thinks he's a pervert and a freak and a weirdo and tells it to him. And then he basically spills the beans, and it seems like, we're not 100% sure, but it seems like Alduin was at the raid where Perdita was scarred by flame. What he said is that there was some crazy arcane user who basically blew himself and everyone around him up, which coincides with the vision that Perdita had. And he's got this locket. So there's like all these bombs being dropped of like, oh my goodness, there's this layer on layer. How did Alina end up with his journal from years and years ago? There's all these like layers happening with this cat Alduin and his connection to apparently somehow, some way, Alina and Perdita. And so there's just all this craziness happening, and it starts getting really, really heated. Lily is basically so Perdita kind of like, she gets overwhelmed and she leaves the room. Lily is ready to literally lunges out to try to attack Alduin. And Jermaine kind of interposes himself in between, is like, hey, wait a minute, we all need to calm down. He is totally cooperating with us. He's agreed to go back to the Vactera and turn himself in. He is not fighting us. He is like, let's take a breather. Lily was really pissed off at Alduin, and probably a little bit at Jermaine for stopping her from just like throttling this guy. And so there's this really intense moment. Jermaine tries to calm everyone down, and Lily storms off. She goes and finds Titus, and Perdita goes outside for some fresh air. That's what Jermaine was like, hey, let's get some fresh air. Marana and Alina are just kind of like flabbergasted and trying to fit, like, why is it that you have these journals and where did this come from? And he's like, oh my God, that's my journal from years and years and years ago. So why does Alina have his journal? What's the connection? Why, there's like all these layers. It's incredible. So we calm ourselves down. He agrees. Marana says, okay, we're going to take you to the Vactera, and from this point forward, you're a prisoner. He hands over his weapons. He lets Marana tie him up. He's totally not resisting. It's really, again, interesting to me as a player, but also to Jermaine. Jermaine walks outside as quickly as he can to make sure, like, Perdita basically, when she saw this locket and had this like flashback, she like stumbled, like leaned up against the wall, like, whoa, or sat on a bed or something, like, whoa. And then once she starts getting these reveals and finds out, like, and Alduin tells her where she got the locket and what happened with this magic user, which Jermaine mentioned to the others, like, look, Alduin isn't the culprit here. He's not the one that caused this pain to Perdita. He was just there. He was part of it, but he was just there as an observer, as part of the raid. He didn't actually do the damage to Perdita, and it sounds to Jermaine like this guy was a wild mage. He lost control of his magic and just exploded in a burst of flame. So maybe not. We'll have to see. After they diffuse the situation, Jermaine goes outside to check on Perdita, like, hey, are you okay? Jermaine had kind of a moment of like, and she kind of says, like, I don't get it. Like, what's going on? Who is this guy? Why is this all coming back right now? This is like really intense for her. She actually shows him the locket. So Jermaine looks at the locket, and he's kind of an artist. He's got this kind of worldview of being an observant dude. And he looks at this and he's like, wow, this looks like you. And so he has this moment where he says, look, Perdita, I'm here for you. If you need, this is going to be heavy and there's a lot of stuff coming up for you right now. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. I'm here for you, okay? And he wanted to put the locket around her neck, but he thought that might be like too much, too intense, or like too heavy for her right now. So he took her hand and kind of like gently placed the locket in her hand and like closed her hand around it and said, I think you should hold on to this. This might be a key that helps you unlock some of these mysteries. And so he's like really, again, big brother or what have you want it. Like, he really cares for Perdita, and like at this point, Jermaine kind of feels like Perdita is the only sane person in this group. He loves the whole group. He's just fascinated and endeared to everyone in this group and will lay down his life for each and every one of them. And at the same time, he's in this really interesting way, Perdita, where she might be the youngest, or for sure one of the youngest in the group, she also has this maturity and this sense of responsibility and duty that is really at the core of Jermaine's beliefs and what he strives for. Even though he's not always that guy, that's why he joined the army. That's why he joined the Vactera. And so she continuously shows this, and so he's really concerned. Like, he keeps seeing her like being overwhelmed by these like this past coming up for her, so he wants to be there and support her, and he feels the same way with everyone. Again, he's starting to get this like concern for Lily. Like, she's got this really dark really dark streak that no one else in the group really does. I mean, Titus, he's got his stuff with why is he turning to alcohol constantly? What's he trying to forget? What's he trying to block out? So Jermaine is obviously feels like, okay, at some point, in fact, I really want to have kind of I've been looking for a moment to kind of have this man-to-man talk with Titus or whatever, like just like he's the only other guy in the group. So at some point, Jermaine is probably going to need him as someone he can relate to on that level. And so that'll be interesting to see where that goes. And I feel like I'm getting a little long-winded and just starting to throw out too many ideas at once. So, wow, it was a huge episode. There was all these issues raised. It was major, and whoa, what an intense episode, session, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot that people are kind of, I think, processing and dealing with. There's a 4-day walk to get back to Unity and back to the Vectera, so we'll have time to kind of maybe flush out some of these developments and hash out and have some probably much needed discussions. I'm sure some of it will not be discussed. Some of it people will probably want to kind of internalize and process on their own, and it'll be really fascinating to see how it goes. So we've written our message to Craig, I think, and basically ended the episode where everybody's just we've divvied out some healing potions. Marana kind of had an insight when Jermaine went down in the fight, like, we really should probably make sure that everyone has some healing potions just in case. So rather than throwing them all in the bag of holding, she decided to start divvying them out. And that was a really smart move, I think, strategically, as well as just a neat character development moment of like Marana's starting to feel like a little bit of responsibility for the group, I think. And that's super cool too. So it's awesome to see all these developments. And man, Mark, the Bearded Bugbear, our DM, just absolutely amazed at how you're layering all this incredible dimensions and levels into this story. It's so much fun every week, and man, I cannot wait for tonight's session. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for watching. I hope I covered everything. I'm sure I missed some stuff, but I do my best, and there was a lot. I hope you enjoyed this recap. I tried to keep it short and sweet, but there was just no way around it. Too much stuff that was really important happened in this session. And wow, what a heavy and amazing session it was. Thanks for stopping by. Please leave comments. I appreciate it. It helps me, and I look forward to interacting with you all in the future. Stay tuned for some great videos coming your way. I will do character development stuff and some interesting perspectives from Jermaine's perspective, and I'll try to use his accent in one of these videos coming up as well for fun. I appreciate you stopping by. Thanks as always, and keep rolling 20s.